You have read the Bible before. You may have read it many times. You know the stories, you know the names, you can quote the verses. But today, not the day you first believed, not the day you were baptized, not the day you cried at an altar. Today is the day the whole thing cracked open. Today is the day you understood what it was actually saying. All of it, from the beginning to the end, one unbroken sentence. And the sentence was about you. It starts in a garden. You need to understand what is being lost in that garden, because everything that comes after it is a rescue operation for the thing that died there. Before the fall, you were naked and unashamed. Read that again. Naked and unashamed. Not physically naked, or not only physically, fully exposed. Every thought, every motive, every part of the interior self, fully visible, fully known, and fully loved. There was no gap between who you were and who you were seen to be. There was no performance. There was no version of yourself you put on for God or for anyone else. You were completely known and completely safe in that knowing. That is the thing the garden represents. Not fruit, not a rule about a tree. Full, unguarded, unchosen, unchallengeable intimacy with the one who made you. And then you chose the fruit. And the first thing that happened, the very first thing before any punishment is mentioned, before any consequence is named, is that you hid. You heard the sound of God walking in the cool of the day and you hid. Not because you were commanded to, not because you were afraid of the punishment yet. You hid because you were naked, because suddenly being fully known felt like danger instead of safety, because the very thing that was your greatest blessing, total transparency before total love, had become the thing you could not bear. That is the wound, not the disobedience, the hiding. The wound is the hiding. And every book that follows is God trying to get you to come out from behind that tree. The law arrives, and you think it is about rules. You have been taught it is about rules. Do this, do not do that, be clean, stay pure, follow the pattern. But the law is not primarily about rules. The law is a mirror. The law shows you the shape of what you actually are, not what you wish you were, not what you perform on Sunday, but what lives in the unobserved corners of you. The law shows you the width of the gap, and the gap is wider than you thought. You cannot keep it. No one can. Not because God set the bar deliberately high to humiliate you, but because keeping it was never the point. Seeing yourself is the point. The law was always meant to produce one specific realization. I am hiding, and I cannot stop hiding on my own. The sacrifices, the priests, the temple, they are not God being satisfied by blood. They are God maintaining a way for you to come close, even while you are still hiding. A temporary solution, a holding pattern, a mercy while the real thing is being prepared. You have read Leviticus and found it tedious, but Leviticus is a love language. Every ceremony, every washing, every offering is God saying, I know you cannot come all the way out yet. So I have built a structure that lets you come part way. Come part way. That is enough for now. Keep coming. Then the Psalms happen to you. Not the triumphant ones, the desperate ones. The ones where the writer is flat on the floor, abandoned, confused, angry at God in language that should not be in a holy book. And yet it is in the holy book. God kept those. God preserved them across 3,000 years and put them in the canon. Why? Because the Psalms are teaching you something about prayer that you have been too afraid to practice. Honesty with God is not disrespect. The man on the floor, screaming, "Where are you?" is closer to God in that moment than the man in the pew with his hands raised and his voice saying the right words. Because the man on the floor has stopped hiding. The man on the floor has brought everything he actually is into the room. The Psalms are permission. They are God saying, bring me what is actually happening inside you. Not what should be there, not what you want me to see. What is actually there, come out from behind the tree. Even if what comes out is a mess. Especially if what comes out is a mess. God is not surprised by what is in the room. God has been waiting at the door of the room. The Psalms teach you that the most spiritual thing you can do is not compose yourself before coming to God. It is to arrive undone. The Psalms teach you that God can handle you at your worst. God prefers you at your worst to a cleaned up impersonation of someone who is fine, because the cleaned up version is still hiding, and God is done with hiding. And the prophets. You have read the prophets and found them severe, full of warnings and woe and judgment. And they are. But underneath every warning is a longing that makes the severity make sense. Hosea is told by God to marry a woman who will abandon him, to love her anyway, to go find her when she leaves, to buy her back when she has sold herself to someone else. And when you read that story and it breaks something in you, that is because you are supposed to understand, this is what I look like, God says. This is the exact texture of what I feel toward you. Not a judge looking for grounds to condemn. A husband who kept going back to the marketplace because he could not stop. The prophets are not primarily about punishment. They are about a love that has been refused and keeps returning anyway. Every warning is attached to an offer. Every passage of judgment has a return passage right behind it. Return to me, and I will return to you. Because the sin was always just another form of hiding. And the God of the prophets is still walking in the garden asking the same question he asked in the beginning. Then Jesus arrives. And on the day you finally understand what the entire Bible is saying, you understand Jesus differently than you ever have before. You have understood him as the solution to a legal problem. Humanity broke the law. Someone had to pay the penalty. Jesus paid it. And that is true. But it is the surface layer of a much deeper thing. Jesus is God coming to the place you are hiding. In person, in a body. With skin and dirt under the fingernails and genuine weariness in the face after a long walk in the sun. God decided that if you would not come out, then God would come in, all the way in. Into the specific and difficult particularity of what it is to be human, to be hungry, to be misunderstood by your closest friends, to be betrayed by a man who kissed your cheek, to watch your body break under something you did not deserve. Jesus does not experience the human condition from a safe distance. He enters it completely, because you were hiding in it completely, and the cross is not primarily a transaction. It is the furthest possible distance God traveled into the hiding place to find you. The tomb is the deepest part of the dark, and the resurrection is what happens when the hiding place runs out of room. There is nowhere left to hide. He went in and came back out, and the door is open from the inside now. The letters of Paul make sense in a way they never have before. You have read justification by faith and understood it as a theological position. Today you understand it as a direction of movement. You are not made right with God because he decided to waive the fine when you believe the correct thing. You are made right with God because faith is the act of coming out from behind the tree. Faith is the moment you stop performing and stop managing the presentation and stop showing God the edited version and instead bring the actual version, the broken, confused, failing, unpolished actual version, and hold it out and say, this is what I have. Is this enough? And the answer, every time without exception, for everyone who has ever genuinely asked it, is yes. Not because the broken version is impressive, because the coming out is the entire point. It has always been the entire point. The garden was about being fully known and fully loved. Sin was about deciding that was too dangerous. Salvation is God refusing to let that decision be the final word on the subject. Revelation does not frighten you the way it used to. You used to read it as threat, a catalog of what happens to those who did not comply, a final accounting, a kind of celestial punishment ledger. Now you read it as arrival. The final image of the entire Bible is not a courtroom. It is a city coming down from heaven like a bride prepared for her husband. And inside the city there is no temple, because the temple was always the workaround, the halfway structure God built for people who were not yet ready to come all the way out. Inside the city there is no temple because God is there directly, fully, unmediated, the way it was in the garden before the hiding began. The tree of life is there, the same tree, the one you lost access to in the 3rd chapter of the 1st book. It is in the 2nd to last chapter of the last book. And the leaves of that tree are for the healing of the nations. Everything wounded in the hiding is healed in the coming out. The entire arc, from the first garden to the final city, from the wound in Genesis to the wholeness in Revelation, is one movement. God working to bring you back to a place where you can be fully known and not be afraid. That is the Bible. All 66 books of it. Every war, every psalm, every prophecy, every letter, every miracle. One long and escalating refusal to let the hiding be permanent. You have been in church for years, maybe decades. You have heard the gospel explained as a transaction, as a self-improvement program, as a fire escape, as a social contract. You absorbed the version you were given because you did not yet have the frame for a different one. But today, the frame arrived. It did not arrive in a service. It arrived the way most real things arrive, quietly, alone, in the middle of something ordinary. You were reading, or you were driving, or you were lying in the dark after waking too early, and something that had been sitting unassembled inside you for years clicked into one piece. You cannot manufacture this moment. You cannot think your way into it. You can only receive it when it comes. And today, it came. The thing that changes when you understand the Bible as one story is that you stop reading it as a collection of separate concerns. You start reading it the way you read a letter from someone who has been trying to reach you for a very long time. Every section is another attempt. Every book is another approach. Every time the previous approach was not enough, because you were not ready, because the world was not ready, because the fullness of the answer had not yet arrived in history, God tried again, with a flood and then without one, with a covenant and then a better one, with a nation and then a person, with a person who lived and then a person who died, and then a person who refused to stay dead. The escalation is itself the message. Look at how far this went. Look at what it cost. That is not a God who wants to be feared into compliance. That is a God who wants to be trusted. And on this day, when the whole thing becomes one sentence instead of 66 books, something changes in the way you read your own life, because the same pattern is inside you, the same garden, the same hiding, the same voice asking where you are. You have been hiding from parts of yourself in plain sight. You have been managing the presentation. You have been bringing the acceptable version of yourself to God and keeping the rest in a room you do not open. And today, you understand that the room is exactly where the gospel is waiting, not for the polished version, not for the Sunday version, for the afraid version, the version that does not know what it is doing, the version that has prayed the same prayer for 3 years with no visible answer. That version. Bring that version. That is the one the garden was for. That is the one Jesus entered a body to reach. That is the one the cross was for. You close the Bible, or you put down the phone, or you just lie in the dark, and something has shifted. Not fixed. Not every question answered. The shift is not an answer. The shift is a direction. You're facing something you were not facing before. You're facing the open door where the hiding place used to be. And for the first time in a long time, you are not sure you want to go back inside. You have spent years presenting a version of yourself to God that you thought was acceptable. You have spent years hoping the real version would become acceptable through enough effort, enough attendance, enough sacrifice. Today you understand that the real version was always acceptable. The acceptable version was never the point. The real version was always the point. And the real version has been standing at the edge of the tree for your entire life, waiting for you to stop being afraid of what happens when it steps into the open. Today you are less afraid, not completely unafraid. Less afraid. That is enough. That is always enough to begin. Where are you? Here. I am here. I came out. I am here.